Today, we're diving deep into the mind of Robert Kiyosaki, the guy who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. He recently did this really in-depth interview where he just laid it all out there, his entire philosophy on money and his pretty controversial predictions for, well, the entire global economy. So let's get into it and break down his playbook for what he calls a whole new world order.
So, Kiyosaki kicks things off by basically challenging everything we've ever been taught. Imagine him holding up a dollar bill and saying, "Never work for this." I mean, what a statement, right? It's designed to make you stop and question everything about your job, your salary, your whole life. But what in the world does he mean by this?
He's talking about paper money, fiat currency, the US dollar, the Indian rupee, the Japanese yen. In his eyes, it's all fake money. He even calls it toilet paper. He's convinced that this paper money is a trap, a system specifically designed to keep the average person stuck and poor. And this one idea, it's the absolute foundation for everything else he believes.
So you have to ask, where does such a radical idea even come from? Well, for him, it all started in his childhood, with two very different father figures who taught him two completely opposite philosophies about life and money. He had his real dad, his poor dad, and then he had his best friend's father, who he calls his rich dad.
And here you see the two mindsets, clear as day. His poor dad, a super educated guy with a PhD, gave him the advice we've all heard a million times. Go to school, get a safe job, save your money, don't get into debt. But his rich dad, an entrepreneur, taught him the exact opposite. He said, never work for money, make money work for you, and, this is the one that gets everybody, use debt to get rich. That conflict is the heart of everything he teaches.
Now, to really get what his rich dad was talking about, you have to understand his definitions, and they're incredibly simple. An asset puts money in your pocket, a liability takes money out of your pocket. Period. That's it. And this simple little idea is why he famously says your house is not an asset. Think about it. For most of us, with the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, the repairs, it's just constantly taking money out of our pocket.
Okay, so that idea of assets and liabilities then builds into a much bigger picture, something Kiyosaki calls the cash flow quadrant. He uses it to basically map out the entire financial world and put every single person who earns money into one of four categories.
So on the left side of this thing, you've got E for employee and S for self-employed. This is where most people are. It's where you trade your time for money. But on the right side, you got B for business owner. These are people who own systems, and I for investor, where your money is literally working for you. The entire point of his teaching is to show you how to get from the left side of this quadrant over to the right.
So why is getting to the right side so important? Well, according to Kiyosaki, it all comes down to how the system is set up, especially when we're talking about taxes. He claims that employees and the self-employed get absolutely hammered with the highest tax rates. Meanwhile, the big business owners and the investors can legally use the tax code to their advantage, paying way less and sometimes even zero. In his world, the system is built to reward capitalists, not workers.
And who does he blame for trapping people on that left side of the quadrant? The school system. He is convinced that schools are designed to create employees and specialists. They teach us to work really hard for that paper money, but they teach us absolutely nothing about how money actually works or how to become a business owner or an investor.
Okay, so this is where we take a pretty big turn. Kiyosaki's ideas go from personal finance advice to some very grim predictions for the entire world. He believes we are right in the middle of the biggest shift in world history, a massive transfer of power that he thinks is going to end in a major crisis.
He points to the rise of what are called the BRICS nations. That's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. For him, this is more than just economics. It's a simple numbers game. He's basically saying, look at the population. The economic center of the world is just naturally shifting away from the West, with its 1.2 billion people, and toward this new group that represents almost 4 billion people.
And this is where his views get really extreme and super controversial. He doesn't see this as some peaceful handover. Nope. In his mind, whenever a dominant global power starts to fall, conflict is pretty much inevitable. He's on record saying he believes this economic fight for dominance is going to spill over into a real global war. It's a really stark and frankly alarming prediction.
He traces the root cause of this whole mess back to one specific moment in history, 1971. That's when President Nixon took the US dollar off the gold standard. In Kiyosaki's telling, that's the day money stopped being real and became an instrument of debt. Sure, the whole petrodollar system kept it afloat for decades, but now, he says, we are in the endgame. He believes all this uncontrolled money printing will lead to one thing: catastrophic hyperinflation, and the complete collapse of the dollar as we know it.
So, if Robert Kiyosaki truly believes the world is on the edge of a cliff, what's his plan? Well, here's the crazy part. He doesn't panic. He actually gets excited. This is his playbook for not just surviving what's coming, but actually getting richer from it. His main strategy is pretty simple. He does not save paper money at all. Instead, he immediately converts it into what he calls real assets. For him, that means 4 things. Gold, which he calls God's money because it's been valuable for thousands of years. Silver, real estate that actually produces income. And Bitcoin, which he calls people's money because it's outside of government control. You'll notice stocks, bonds, and mutual funds are nowhere on that list. His entire strategy is built on mastering 2 things that the rest of us are taught to be terrified of: debt and taxes. He borrows insane amounts of money, debt, to buy assets like apartment buildings. Those buildings then produce cash flow, and because the tax laws are written to favor people who do this, he says he pays little to no tax, all legally.
And this quote just perfectly captures his mindset. While most people are freaking out during a market crash, watching their 401ks disappear, he sees it as a giant fire sale. He says that back in 2008, when the world was melting down, he borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars to scoop up real estate when it hit rock bottom. He's not afraid of a crash. He's literally waiting for the next one.
But after all the strategies, the quadrants, the predictions of global collapse, Kiyosaki boils it all down to one final and what he sees as the most important point. It comes in the form of a single, powerful question that he aims directly at you.
That's it. That's the question he asks again and again. What do you want? Do you want the security, or the illusion of security, that comes with a paycheck? Do you want to be an employee, or do you want to be a capitalist? He says there's no right or wrong answer here, but you absolutely have to choose. Because if you don't choose for yourself, you can bet the system is going to choose for you.
And in the end, his real message isn't actually about buying gold or real estate. It's about financial education. He says your greatest asset, the most powerful tool you will ever have, is your brain. It's what's between your ears. He sees the world of money as a game, with different rules for different players. There are rules for employees, rules for investors, rules for capitalists. And so his final question is really a challenge. Which set of rules are you going to learn? Which game are you going to master? And ultimately, which game will you choose to play?